Okay, next we're just going to actually move a few things around, load a couple other files, move them around, and just sort of get started with animating a little bit in After Effects. So the first thing, I've got my clip and I got my composition. I want to add a few more clips in here. So let me pop up this folder. I'm just going to take my ball and my star Illustrator files and just drag them over here and load them. Give them a second to pop up. And so now I've got our ball and our star, and I'm just going to drag them down and load them. If I unhide this guy, or basically make it disappear, all I have to do is uncheck the eyeball here. And you'll see I've got these two, a ball and a star, as AI files. But what I want to do is actually have this clip as the background, and the files are going to be flying around on top of it. So to change the order, just like changing the order of layers in Photoshop, all I have to do is grab this clip and drag it down to the bottom. And now I've got my ball and my star. And you can see because the ball is in the middle, it goes behind the star, but it's on top of the video clip. And the same with the star, if I move this over like that. And if I were to grab these and change the order, now the ball will go on top of the star. So whatever's on the bottom is on the bottom, and it's just like Photoshop. So that's where we're going with that. I need another. I just want to put a little banner on for these guys to land on. So first I'm going to take my ball and my star and just move them off the screen. You can see once you leave the active video area, the part that people would see at home or on the web, it goes to a wireframe here. But I've got them just off the screen. And I'm going to come down to the blank area underneath here and just right click and say New. And what I want is just a solid color layer. And in this case it's set to blue, so I'm just going to leave it. But if I wanted to change it, I could just click on this and adjust it. Maybe I'll make it a little bit lighter. Or I can take the eyedropper and just pick off the screen if there's a particular color that I want it to be. And I'm just going to say OK. And so now I've got this, and it's covered up everything because it comes in by default on top. And I really want it to be above my video layer and below the ball and the star. So I'm just going to grab it and drag it down and let go. So now if I were to grab one of these, they float over this. And I don't want this to cover up the whole frame. So what I'm going to do is come down to my solid color layer and open it up to the transform. And you can see position, scale, rotation, opacity, just like anything else. I can also just interactively come up here and grab it and drag down because I just want to scale it to a banner. And then I'm going to move it. And I can move it either position here and change these numbers, just change it vertically like so. I'm going to undo that. I can also grab it and just move it, but you notice that it floats. It's hard to keep it exactly vertical or horizontal. But if I hold the shift, once I start moving it, if I hold the shift key, I can just slide it and it'll stay just going vertically. Or if I go horizontally, it'll stay locked to just going horizontal. So the difference with Photoshop is that this one you have to start moving the clip first and then hold shift, whereas Photoshop you can hold shift and it'll just stay locked from the get-go. And I'm just going to move this down like that. And I just want to do a quick animation of the ball and the star. So I'm going to close this up and open up. Let's see the star. All right, let's go for the ball first. There's our ball. And I'm going to open it up, and under the transform you'll notice the little stopwatch to the left of all of these capabilities, all these properties. And I'm just so that I have control of all of them, I'm going to put my play cursor at the beginning of my timeline. On a PC, if you hit home or end, those keys, that'll take you to the beginning or the end of your timeline automatically. Not sure what that is on a Mac for that particular function, but I'll find out. So Anyway, what I want to do, I'm not worried about the anchor point. That's the centerpiece here because I want it to stay rotating around its pivot. But I am going to keyframe by clicking on the, all you have to do is click once on the little stopwatch to the left of any property. So position, scale, rotation, and opacity in case I want that. And I've got a keyframe. You notice now that I have these clicked, there's a keyframe on every one of those properties on the first frame, and the one that's selected is yellow. And if you hold shift select, you can, just like a standard computer, you can do control whatever, so you can work multiples at a time. Right now I'm just worried about position, so I'm just going to select my position. We've got that, and I'm going to put my play cursor back down here, and let's see, my timeline is about 19 seconds long because that's what I defined it when I made the project. So I'm just going to, I've got the keyframe on frame 1, I'm going to go down to frame 6 and just move the ball, and you'll see it starts creating a, I can just keep moving, it's giving me a motion path. And you'll see it automatically, all you have to do is keyframe the first frame, and then once it's in a keyframe mode, if you move down the timeline, the cursor down the timeline, it's going to automatically put keyframes in as you make changes. So now I'm going to come down to, let's say, 12 seconds, and I'm going to move this guy up and just park it there. So now if I scrub my timeline, which is, that's a term meaning slide your cursor up and down the timeline, you'll see how it's animating up there. What I don't want it to do is to be that size when it's up full frame. So on the end, I'm going to basically just come up to my end landing keyframe. If I want to juggle between keyframes, these little arrows here, that's previous keyframe, next keyframe. So you can jump between the keyframes. So I'm going to come back to this keyframe, and I'm just going to grab the ball and scale it. And if I hold shift down while I scale it, it's going to be a uniform scale. And then I'm going to slide it down a little bit so it lands like that. And you can see now I've got 3 keyframes on my position. 1, 2, the beginning, that point, and this one. And I have just a keyframe at the beginning and the end for the scale, so it's going to be transitioning from the large full size to the smaller size, but it fits right into my banner here. And then lastly, I'm going to come back to this keyframe, and what I want to do is kind of arc it into this bend. I don't want it to stay straight up. I want it to kind of rotate around and arc into it. So what I'm going to do is take my rotation, click on the rotation value, and actually key it like this, and then come down. So now it's like that, and then when I get to the end keyframe, just pop down to my position, I'm going to take my rotation, and instead of 34 degrees, I'm just going to type in 0 again, and so it's upright. So you can see how it swings in and then rights itself up. So now it's caching the frames so it can play back. And once that's up there, we can stop. If we want, we can play up here. And we have our ball. All right. That being said, let's go on to the star. Open up the star, get my transform properties open, and I'm going to come back to the beginning of the timeline. And to start with, we're going to do the same thing. I've already keyed it at the beginning. If I open up my ball, I can see both of these, so I can see where the keyframes are. What I don't want is them to be exactly the same. It's kind of symmetric. So what I'm going to do is come down and actually have it work a little bit faster. So I'm going to have this in 4 seconds. I'm going to take the ball, or the star, and bring it up to here. And you'll see now I've got a keyframe here. And I'm going to split the difference here. Oh, didn't get that keyframe. Alright, well, that's how videos go. I'm not going to start this over again, but go back to the beginning keyframe and remember to key all your properties. And now that we've got that, I'm going to come down. And by the way, if you want to get rid of all your keyframes, just click on the stopwatch again. Now that we've got that removed, I'm going to put my star back down here and key it. And then move down to frame 4 and bring this up here. And then I'm going to come down to about frame 10 and have this up here already. So this is going to be moving much faster. Now if I look at my timeline, see how it... And it works a little better because it's not an identical move, unless you want it to be. But you can see how you can take a look at your keyframes and sort of checkerboard it that way. And then I'm going to come in right around to my landing spot. And let's scale that one down, holding shift to keep it from stretching or squashing. At this point I don't want it to be squashed or stretched. And land, so it's landed there. And go about halfway, and let's rotate it into the curve, like so. And let's cache it. And it's almost there. Let's come back here, almost there. Except I do want the star to right itself up, so let's make one change. Let's come down to its landing spot. There, and let's set our rotation back to 0. There we go. And let's go ahead and cache that. Stop it. Okay, let's assume for a moment we've got that. It is awfully slow, but that's fine. Let's just assume that your client wants these to go a little bit faster. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is just grab these keyframes and slide them down the timeline to about here. And I'm going to grab these guys and bring them over. So this is going to be a 4-second move on the star altogether. And let's come up here and grab these keyframes, and we're going to offset them a little bit, make it go faster, like so. When you move keyframes closer to the beginning of the timeline and closer together, things tend to go faster. When you spread them apart, they go slower. So what I've done is, instead of going over 12 seconds, which was very slow, I've just grabbed the keyframes and moved them down the timeline. closer to the beginning so that it happens in a less amount of time. And let's just play that and see what that does. Now that we have this cached, let's let it play. And we'll stop it. There we go. And let's speed that up just a little bit more. So we're going to take these keyframes, move them closer, take these keyframes, move them down the timeline, and you can see that's like that. And let's just take this, move these guys here, move these guys here, and now everything's going to happen within 4 seconds. So that's basically how you get into just keyframing, position, rotation, and scale. Very quick little way of doing an animation. By the way, if you were to want to, let's say, maybe put a drop shadow on these, which is an effect, what you can do, this folder over here called Effects and Presets, if you have a tool that you want to, that you know the name of and you don't remember exactly where it is in all of the different effects folders here, what you can do is type in the name of the effect, drop shadow, and there's my drop shadow effect, and being parked right there, I'm just going to grab it and drag it and drop it on the star. And you see it created an effects folder under the transform. And there's my drop shadow. And then I'm going to take the same drop shadow and drop it on the ball. And it creates an effects folder. And you notice now I've got up here on the top, it switched from the project to the effects. And the effect that I have, I've only got one effect put on right now, is drop shadow. I'm going to move the distance down a little bit. And I'm going to soften it quite a bit, like so. And then also the slider here, I can move its position. I think I'm just going to leave it down and to the right by like default. You'll notice there's also stopwatches on all of these properties, so this is all animatable too over time if you want to like change the softness or maybe create the effect of a light moving by changing the distance, offset like that. But that's just a basic drop shadow, 58 and 188. So let's go down to our star effect, and I'm going to type in 58, which is 58 pixels, and soften it up to 188 pixels as a blur. So now we have that. And they will be on the whole time, so there will be a bit of a drop shadow, harder to see, but there is a drop shadow hanging off these guys. There we go, right through here across our background video also, but it just adds a little bit more dimension to it and gives you a little bit more relief on this banner here. In fact, if we want to, we can take the drop shadow and put it on the banner. And then take that one and offset that, blur that out, kind of over a dark background. You don't see it that much, but there is a little bit there, and it does give it a slight bit of relief there. But anyway, so that's a basic just how to move things around in After Effects. We'll get into type next, but is a place to start as far as just remember, click on the stopwatches, and wherever your play cursor is at the time that you click on the stopwatch is where it's going to put in its first keyframe, and then after that it's going to auto key, meaning once you move the timeline and make a change to one of these, it's going to automatically key it. If you need to remove all your keyframes, just uncheck this. Just click on the stopwatch again, and it will remove all of your animation. And basically have fun with it. So that's it for this lesson.